So Gerry, last time when we were speaking, you talked a little bit about your own experience, your story, and your journey with stress and depression on the farm, and what some of the things that you had in your own toolkit to help you deal with and manage that stress. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the 6 R's of stress reduction, and also just kind of focusing in on each one in sequence. So.
Well, just generally speaking, Janet, we talk often here at Manitoba Farm and Rural Support Services about the 6 R's. Of course, the first one, when we're going through these unwanted feelings, feelings that we don't feel familiar with, of course, it's important to look at the 6 R's so that we can, number 1, recognize, number 2, reduce, number 3, respond, number 4, relax, number 5, reach out, and number 6, resources. So those are the things that we like to refer to when we talk about the 6 R's, because if number 1, if we don't recognize these feelings that I just talked about, then of course how are we going to deal with them?
Mm-hmm. So let's start with the recognizing. What when we talk about recognizing stress, what kind of things do you say?
Well, I think it's important to recognize the fact, number 1, that all of us have stress in our life. Stress makes up a large part of our life very often, and we have to realize and understand and recognize that there's good stress and there's bad stress. Mm-hmm. Good stress, of course, is particularly on the farm when we talk about calving, getting up in the night and checking the cattle herd during harvest, during seeding. We have certain stresses that keep us going and make sure we get our job done. Mm-hmm. But these are short-term stresses. When we talk about recognizing bad stress, it's a stress that hits us and just lingers and keeps going and going. And the one I refer to most often, of course, is financial stress. Because, of course, when we have financial stress, particularly, again, referring to the farm, financial stress can be something that hangs around for a long time, particularly if you're a grain farmer and you only have 1 crop per year, or a cattle producer with calf crops. So that financial stress just keeps hanging over us for a long period of time, and that's when it can become a problem.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And without getting into the whole medical side of it, there's a whole science of the chemicals that are rushing through our bodies, the adrenaline and the cortisone and all of those kinds of things, like, as you say, allow us to move through situations in the short term. But if they stay activated, if we stay in that high alert kind of place, our bodies cannot tolerate that without it having some adverse effects. Am I right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what happens in our body, and it's important to also recognize the fact that each one of us responds differently to stress. I referred earlier this morning to some of my colleagues in regards to some stress I've had over the last month, and the fact that I refer back to when I was farming, and it feels to me now like my tolerance level for stress has been somewhat reduced. So it's not an event in our lives that creates stress, rather it's how we react to that creates the stress, and so it's important to recognize that.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the signs of stress? You say it's important to recognize that stress is a normal response. We all have it. What are some of the ways in which it impacts on our lives?
Well, I think if we look at it, we refer to 4 different areas that stress really hits us. One is socially, one is emotionally, one is physically, and the other one is mentally. And we'll recognize these things when they hit. And when I talk about physically, for example, it'll be back pains or neck pains. We're uptight, we're tense. Mm-hmm. When we talk about emotionally, of course, irritable, a lot of anger. Mm-hmm. I know certainly that a lot of my stress manifests itself in road rage, and I know my wife doesn't really appreciate that, but that's how it manifests itself in us. Mm-hmm. And when we recognize these signs and symptoms of stress, of course, or even recognize how it affects our behavior, and of course it leads to much higher expectations of ourselves and of others, and of course in relationships, that has the potential to create real havoc.
Right. So like you say, before you can actually do something about stress, the first step is really to recognize the impact that it is having on you, and as you mentioned before, every person is different. I know that on the Farm and Rural Support Services stress line, we often hear from people that are making reference to the physical symptoms. They're not sleeping, they're not eating, they're having the headaches and maybe chest pain and so forth, and that's often what brings a person to their doctor's office.
Exactly.
But it also has other kinds of ramifications. So,
exactly.
Just for the audience out there, that we do have fact sheets on the on these signs of stress and ways to manage it on our website, and I'll just mention the website address is www.ruralsupport.ca. So if anybody wants to download those handouts or take a look at them there, it makes reference to all of the signs of stress that you have mentioned today. Well, thanks, Gerry. And next video, we're going to be talking about how to reduce stress, which is the next step.
All right.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you.